Absolutely. Let's do werewolf. If you're new here, my name's Sandra and I love old books. So I got a set of encyclopedias from the 1920s and we started going over random stuff. Now, vampires and werewolf were not in that book. My husband found me another set of encyclopedias. These are the Chambers encyclopedias and these are from the 1890s and they did have it. So if you click on the comment and go back, we went over vampires. Now we're going to go over werewolves. Okay. A.S. Werewolf. Were a man, wolf a wolf. The modern German Werwolf is the Middle High German Werwolf, Latinized as Gerulphus or Gerulphus, whence the Old French Gerul, the modern name being pleonastically loup garou. Hollowell quotes from the Bodleian MS Dictionary, Archaic and Provincial Words, SV, a charmed, a characteristic example of folk etymology. Okay, so this is written in older English, so it's a little weird. There been some that eaten children and men, and eateth no one other flesh, for that time that they be a charmed with many's flesh, for rather they would be dead. And they be clept werewolves, for men should be war of hem. The following passages from Gervas of Tilbury's Odia Imperialia and Richard Verstegen's Restitution of Decayed Intelligence from 1605 gave a summary of belief about the werewolf, one of the most uncanny of the creatures of human imagination. Vitimus enim frequentier in Anglia per lunatonis homines in lupos mutari quad hominum genus Gerulphus galli nominant Angli vero werewolf decunt. The werewolves are certain sorcerers who, having anointed their bodies with an ointment which they make by the instinct of the devil, and putting on a certain enchanted girdle, do not only unto the view of the others seem as wolves, but to their own thinking have both the shape and the nature of wolves, so long as they wear that said girdle. And they do dispose themselves as very wolves, in worrying and killing and most of human creatures. This superstition was widely spread in ancient and medieval times, and is still a living fact amongst many savage races, and even in corners of France, not to speak of Russia and Bulgaria. Wlislocki, writing in 1891, Journal Gypsy Society, tells us of a gypsy fiddler's wife at the Torres in North Hungary about 10 years before, who had kept the family in mutton and enabled her husband to start a thriving inn by her nocturnal ravages as a Ruvenish. The parson cured the woman by sprinkling her and the house with holy water. The peasants murdered the husband, and 2 of his slayers were then living in the village. Indeed, we may say it is a commonplace of folklore that certain men, by natural gift or magic art, can turn for a time into ravaging beasts, which Dr. Tyler calls... Oops, sorry, my phone's dying. Which Dr. Tyler calls substantially a temporary metempsychosis or metamorphosis, and Thomas Aquinas lends the weight of his grave authority to a sound theological explanation. All angels, good and bad, have by natural virtue the power of transmuting our bodies. In various forms of mental disease, there is a belief in a similar transformation, but this no doubt presupposes an antecedent sane belief in the possibility of such metamorphosis into animals. These insane delusions have been widely prevalent at various times in history of human society and have given rise to the name of lycanthropy. I'm going to have to see if that's in there too. The wolf is, of course, not the only animal, although the most common in Western Europe, but in England he has long been unknown, and the cat has had to be largely employed in witch transformations. Herodotus tells us the Nuri turn to wolves for a few days every year. The Khans of Orissa think some men have the art of Mlipa, and by the help of the gods become Mlipa, tigers, to kill their enemies, one of the man's 4 souls going in to animate the beast. The tribe of Buddhists, again in Abyssinia, ironworkers and potters, have also the evil eye and the power of turning into hyenas, whence they are very properly denied the Christian sacrament. In Virgil's 8th Eclogue, we read how Morris makes himself a wolf by means of poisonous herbs, and how he witches away the crops and calls up dead folk from their graves. Petronius Arbiter has a story of the transformation of the Versipellis or turnskin, and here also we find a note so familiar in European stories as werewolves and witches of how when the wolf is wounded, the man who wore his shape is found to bear exactly the same wound. It says Patronus. That's crazy. We find werewolf warriors in peculiar ferocity in Scandinavian sagas, and to this day in Denmark, a man who is a werewolf is recognized by his eyebrows meeting as if his soul were ready to take flight like a butterfly. I knew it. Ben Shapiro's a werewolf. That makes so much sense. The change of shape is often affected by taking off the clothes, putting on a girdle, or rubbing with magic salve. Wolf girdles are still spoken of, at least in Germany, and in December, as Tyler notes, one must not talk of the wolf by name, lest the werewolves rend you. During the 16th century, France was much infested with werewolves, the trial of Galice Garnier at Dole in 1573 being the most famous historical instance. And Olus Magnus in the same period tells of specifically accursed werewolves who were ferocious against the Orthodox. I'm wondering if it was just people who didn't agree with the horribly disgusting stuff the churches did, and so they started this whole bullshit to be able to explain why the people were supposedly evil. Just saying. But on the other hand, we meet a more kindly view in the Bisclervet of Marie de France Lay and in the romance of William and the Werewolf, more in keeping with the usual folklore notion of interchangeable transformations and mutual relationship between the human and the animal world. It is obvious that in all this there is a close connection with the obscure facts underlying totemism. And as we have seen, Dr. Tyler connects it also with metapsychosis, and both at least agree in a common basis of animism. The mythological explanation, Ikos wolf for Nukos shining, is of course inadmissible, for the transformations were not confined to beasts with shining coats. Equally inadmissible is the rationalistic explanation of an innate thirst for blood in some natures breaking out occasionally, together with hallucinations and cannibalism, the chief victims being peasants whose chief terror was wolves, for the idea of such transformations must already have been familiar and common rather than exceptional, and thus a belief in these necessarily presupposes a belief in lycanthropy. See, we're going to have to definitely look that up. And then again, it tells you other books that you can look into. That is crazy. So what should we go over next?